South Korea summoned the Russian ambassador to protest the country's new defense pact with North Korea. Earlier this week, the two countries vowed mutual defense if either was attacked. Russia's president criticized South Korea's action. Seoul had said it would consider providing arms to Ukraine to fight against Russian troops. Vladimir Putin warned that would be a big mistake. Take a listen.
Those who send these missiles to Ukraine think that they are not fighting us. But I said, including when I was in Pyongyang, that we reserve the right to supply weapons to other regions of the world with regard to our agreements with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I don't rule that out either. And where will they go next? The West supplies weapons to Ukraine and then says that they don't control anything after that, and it doesn't matter how these weapons are used. We can also say we have delivered something to someone and then say we don't control anything. So let them think about that. At this stage, the most important task for us is to repel these attacks on Russian cities.
Putin made that comment while on a visit to Vietnam, which was also criticized by Washington. Joining me on the set is our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you. Doug, what did you make of Vladimir Putin's warning?
Well, it's very predictable, first of all. And look, it shows that he is doubling down. He is all in this alliance that most of the West, NATO, Europe, the U.S., its allies, this alliance that he's made with the North Korean leader that they see as autocrats behaving badly. And what I mean by that is this revival of essentially a 1961 Cold War era mutual defense agreement couldn't come at a worse time right now when the world is already very polarized. And this is the type of alliance that most people will see as creating all of the fissures and the instabilities and the potential for conflicts to come. Look, South Korea, one of the key players in this region, has basically through its national security advisor said, and these were his words, that the sophistry, that is false arguments, and absurdity by parties that have abandoned the responsibilities and norms of the international community, it's apparent. In other words, he's basically calling out Putin for being hypocritical. This is Putin going to Kim Jong-un, basically courting Kim Jong-un because he needs munitions and weapons to replenish his already depleted stockpiles, and Kim in return hopes to perhaps get not just economic assistance but the military technologies to put those vital nuclear warheads on his ballistic missiles we know from his tests already have been developed and exist. So it's really a marriage of convenience, but of a marriage of very, very bad convenience from the West standpoint. South Korea immediately is going to probably strengthen what's already a security alliance with the United States. The U.S. has had a very close alliance with South Korea. It's also going to probably step up its defense cooperation with both the U.S. and Japan. So that triumvirate in the region, U.S., South Korea, Japan, that is probably going to be bolstered as a direct result of this mutual defense pact. But perhaps significantly for South Korea alone, South Korea has had a long-standing policy not to provide lethal weapons to Ukraine. And not just Ukraine, to any country in an active war zone. It is reconsidering that policy in light of what's happened. It hasn't done it yet. It says it's waiting to really hear Putin more specifically spell out the consequences, what this pact really means. But it says it is considering giving Ukraine weapons directly. Until now, it's only done so indirectly, i.e. via Poland, for instance, and then from Poland those weapons would make their way to Ukraine. This would be significant because South Korea has a giant stockpile of howitzers, that is artillery shells, especially the 105 millimeter variety. It has already reportedly supplied the U.S. to replace the U.S. stockpiles when those shells have been sent by the U.S. to Ukraine. If it were to do so with Ukraine, it could have perhaps a significant impact on the battlefield balance of forces between Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine right now desperately needs those shells. South Korea is said to have millions of them, maybe 3.4 million. So it could make a difference. I say could, I underline that. And let's just keep our eyes on the prize here. North Korea has reportedly already supplied Russia perhaps with up to 5 million artillery shells. Europe hasn't been able to keep up. U.S. hasn't been able to keep up. South Korea is not a negligible part of this potential equation here.
The elephant in the room here, of course, being China. Where is Beijing in all of this?
Yeah, look, the reductionist easy argument. If you're just tuning in, you're saying, oh, China must be loving this whole thing. China, North Korea, Russia, all linking arms against the West, the U.S., big bad U.S. and Europe in their battle to see off Western hegemony. Not that easy. The deeper, sort of more nuanced analysis, Will, is that China is not perhaps too pleased with Russia drawing closer to North Korea. Let's not forget that, there's a big nuclear weapons and non-proliferation issue at work here. And for many, many years and decades, you basically had one thing that the U.S. and Russia and China all agreed on, and that was banding together to try to, through the UN and other institutions, prevent North Korea from developing nuclear weapons and its weapons program. That all bets are off. That no longer seems to be the case. China has one thing first and foremost. Yes, it's an ally of North Korea. Yes, it's helped keep North Korea in power, namely to be a buffer, as it sees it, between itself and South Korea and the U.S. sphere of influence in that region. But there's no love lost between Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. It wants, that is it being China, wants stability in the region. It sees this pact as perhaps being the last thing it wanted because it could foster greater instability and put it in a very awkward position when it doesn't really want to totally alienate the U.S. and the West at the same time.
Yeah, what have reactions been from the West or from NATO?
The reactions from NATO is NATO already, as we know, has, its heads have been concentrated by the 2-year-plus war in Ukraine. A lot of solidarity and support. But now NATO has been in a leadership, looking for its next leader. And the reports are that Mark Rutte, the Dutch prime minister, the soon outgoing Dutch prime minister, it will be the incoming new head of NATO. He is a man who finally got the consensus, reportedly, of all 32 NATO allies, including Hungary, which signed off on it. Viktor Orban of Hungary had perhaps been the last person standing up against the prospect of Mark Rutte's becoming the head. But Hungary has now signed off on it, apparently, and that is going to pave the way for Rutte to take the helm, take over from Jens Stoltenberg. It's probably going to be in October. Crucial timing because it's going to come a little more than a month before the U.S. election, which really could change the entire nature and the balance of forces in NATO, depending on what Donald Trump, if he were to win, plans to do.